So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. It looks like we have people from all over the world. I was seeing Nigeria. I just saw Ecuador, a bunch of states from the US, Kenya, Indonesia. So thank you all for joining. I know it's, um, all over the place, crazy times. So welcome. This will be a presentation on Python for Excel. That's a Python crash course for Excel users today. So with that, I'd like to thank George for joining us today. George is the founder of Streamfest Analytics, and he's also an author for O'Reilly Media. George, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Thank you, Nathan. Thanks, everybody, for coming. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. I saw someone from Dayton, Ohio. That might be the closest person from me. I'm not even going to try the farthest because there's so many of you. But we'll go ahead and get started. We've got about an hour here. So lines are open at any time if you have questions. And Nathan mentioned they'll make their way to me. So I want to make this as interactive and helpful as possible for you. Let's roll along here. One thing I will point you toward if you want to read more about what we're going to cover today, and I'll share this at the end of the presentation too. I do have a white paper on 5 things Excel users should know about Python. So that will be a nice accompaniment to what we did today. That link will get to you as well as some other goodies later on here. So the resources are probably going to be important. I see someone from Youngstown, so maybe they're the winner now. If Fatima, you could share the resources now, this link, this is going to be the slides, the code, everything we're doing today. And if you'd like to, you're very welcome to click this button right here. What this is going to do is launch a session to run Python right along with me in the cloud. So you don't need to have anything downloaded. I think this is going to work. Maybe we'll break something, but it won't be on your computer. So go ahead and try it if you want to follow along. If you just want to listen, you're at work, whatever, whatever, this is your time, do with it what you will. But if you can, get your hands on the keyboard and type Python right along with me, the more likely it is to stick with you later on. So with that all being said, we'll let that kind of circulate, that link, and that will have, again, the slides, everything that you'll need is available there. Okay, so the first thing, and I don't know if we're ready yet on this, Nathan or Fatima, but I thought we could go ahead and kick it off with one of the book giveaways. I've got 2 more. This is Advancing in Analytics. This is my book From Excel to Python and R. With O'Reilly Media. So again, if you're an Excel user, I really want to show you that it's not a pipe dream to learn Python and R. There are very practical applications for it. So I'll let the wheels turn on that, and I guess I'll keep going. Okay, so Nathan is filling out the form. Maybe what we'll do is I'll walk through a little bit of this and then we can give away. Ebenezer says, I want to win. So does Clay. I'm sure they're not alone. So we're talking about Python and analytics. We'll see how the gods of probability treat you today. Okay, so the way I have this lined up is basically a 5-point list here. 5 things you need to know about Python as an Excel user. The first thing is going to be that it is open source. And what does that mean? I think this is important because this is not the case with Excel. Okay, open source means that anybody's free to pretty much do what they want with that source code. So imagine if you took copies of Excel and went down to your local street corner and tried to sell copies of it. I don't think Microsoft would be real happy about that. It's a little more murky with Python. Really, anybody has the intellectual property rights to do things with that code that they want to. And that's going to mean this will be a kind of free, available environment for other people to build on. This is going to be really important for what we're going to do because we're going to make advantage of this whole ecosystem. Okay. The first thing is going to be the Python source code. Now, you can go to python.org, and that is the official Python Foundation. So there is a nonprofit kind of behind all the stuff that we're doing that oversees the official Python source code. So you can check out that. We're going to download, and what we do in the book is use this Anaconda distribution. So the idea here, I remember when I learned Python as an Excel user, people were talking about distributions and browsers and all the kind of the tooling behind Python, it didn't make any sense to me. So I want to explain it to you now. Anaconda is the distribution of that code, and it's going to come with some extra goodies. So again, think of a distribution, right? Distribution of the Python source code bundled up with some other stuff, including what is going to be this Jupyter Notebook. That's what we're going to use in a moment to actually run and interact with our Python code. So it's a little bit different than Excel, where everything's kind of bundled into one tool, right? The code is handled by Microsoft, it's proprietary. We keep our data there, we do our analysis there, and it's kind of an all-in-one tool. A lot of open source tools, including Python, there are a lot of layers to this. So we have our source code, we're getting the distribution somewhere, we're going to navigate through it with something called Jupyter Notebooks, and it's just a different paradigm. So I think it's important to understand that as you get started here. So what we're going to do is walk through a little bit of the Jupyter Notebook. Now I see some questions about getting the Python files and things like that. You're going to find that, everybody, in the GitHub URL. So check for that, and that will have all the information. If you want to follow along again, you're going to have this launch binder button, and that's going to let you run this along with me on the cloud here. So thanks, Fatima, and everybody for posting that again. What we're going to do is run our first Jupyter Notebook. So this will be your first time coding in Python. I hope everybody's excited. If we have any percussionists here, you can do our drum roll, and I'll hear it through the ether. Okay, so this is going to look a little bit different if you're online, but it's the same idea. We're using, yes, there's going to be a recording share. Claudia, you're going to see it on the repo here. There's going to be launch binder, and it looks like Nathan and Fatima are doing that too. Okay, so I'm in a Jupyter Notebook. Now, the idea here is we want to really tell a story with our code. Okay, so if I click over here on Markdown, I'm going to click this button. And if you've ever used Markdown before, maybe you've seen people use the asterisk to kind of illustrate their point, right? And something like that. I'm going to run this cell, and hey, cool, it rendered, it's text. It looks like a document, right? This could go on a website or something like that. So the idea here is that we are going to have this document that will let us intersperse code and text and really tell a story with our data. Now, Jupyter Notebooks are not just for Python. You could use them if you're an R user, JavaScript, etc. But it really started as a Python project. And this is not a class on Markdown or Jupyter Notebooks. If you want to learn more about those, and it's a good idea if you're getting started with this stuff, you go up to the help button here. There's going to be all sorts of information about, you could take a little tour of the Jupyter Notebook. You can learn more about Markdown, etc. This is really a Python class for Excel users, so we're not going to do a ton of that right now. Okay, so let's start with some really earth-shattering stuff here, everybody. Get ready, because I'm about to blow your mind with Python. And we are going to find arithmetic. We're going to run it. You're going to see a button here. You can use the keyboard shortcut too. I'll go to help. You're going to see keyboard shortcuts. You're an Excel user, you probably like keyboard shortcuts. So you'll find some here with Jupyter as well. Okay, so let's go back to 1+1. I am going to click run. So the Jupyter Notebook sent that code to Python. Python found the result and brought it back to us. And we get an answer of 2. Really exciting. So you've done your first Python coding. Let's continue on here. So a lot of the stuff that you do in Excel is going to be really similar to Python. I'll give you one really important example, which is functions. So let's say you want to take the absolute value of 100 in Excel. You would do something like this, right? And it's pretty much the same thing in Excel as it is in Python. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm ready to run this code. So in this case, I'm going to do shift. I'm on a Windows computer, shift enter. Cool, I get the answer. So like I said, a lot of these things are really, really similar. This could be identical. One thing that's going to be very different is this idea of objects. So let's say I want to know the absolute value of minus 100. If you were in Excel, you might write another formula in another cell referring to this formula. And it gets a little messy. I kind of call it a spaghetti workbook, right? Because you've got references on references, and you could change something and then something 5 cells back changes. So Python's going to prevent that by storing all these things in memory. And each piece of memory is an isolated thing. They're not going to affect each other unless you tell it to. So what I'm going to do now is imagine you're putting this into a box, for example, and I'm going to write a comment here. If you've coded before, comments are important. These are for you as the human and not the computer. The computer doesn't care about this, but I think it's important, and most people agree, to leave good comments. So we're putting the absolute value of 100 into a box called A. All right. So just imagine when you see an object, and this is an important difference from Excel, because it doesn't really have this. You can name tables and ranges. You may have done that before, but you can't necessarily store them into memory and kind of work in an isolated case. So if I take the absolute value of minus 100, so I'm kind of putting this into a box, as it were. Okay, so it's in a box called A. Maybe later I'm doing my work and I'm gonna come back to it and, oh yeah, I'd actually like to use that. Well, what's in that box, right? Well, you can find out. All you have to do is print it. So you're opening the box, and all I have to do, letter A, Control, Enter. There's that. So these are the real basics of Python. I think it's really important to understand just how it thinks, how it works, what it's used for, before you get too crazy with trying to go and build a model or something like that. Know what you're working with before you put it into production, right? All right, so this is the Jupyter Notebook, and you see we have text, we have code. This is meant to be very interactive. You'll see here I can move these cells up and down. There's some other stuff. Play around with this later, right? Just get used to the Jupyter Notebook. Like I said, this will look a little different if you're running the binder link, but it's a similar concept. And the other thing I would encourage you to do is just keep this open if you're working and maybe you need to calculate a tip or tax or something like that. I mean, don't be ashamed to use Python as a calculator starting out. Just get used to how it works. Try a couple of functions, see what the functions are and how they relate from Excel to Python. So if you're able to relate what you already know to something new, that's a really big head start. And that's a big purpose of the book, is to take those skills that you already understand pivot tables. You don't have to relearn them. You just have to learn how to do them in Python. It's data analysis. These are just different instruments for doing data analysis. So with that all being said, let's go back to the slides. Let's see what we've got here. If we're ready, I'm happy to do a giveaway. And I see a lot of questions, so we'll see what those are in a bit. We'll have a break for that. So let me know if it's a good time to do a giveaway.
Let's let's do questions, and then maybe the next time you're ready for a giveaway, we'll do one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah. Questions. What's the best way for me to take these? Just check them out on the Zoom.
Well, I'm seeing, so if you open up the Q&A tab, you should be able to see them. Okay. Right. So there's one on, can we pivot in Python? I'm assuming they're referring to a pivot table.
Yes. So you can do pivot tables. There is part of how to do that in advancing in analytics in the book. So we're not going to cover that today, but it's very possible. And I would say in general, the answer is going to be yes on what you want to do with Python. what you want to get good at is knowing how to read the documentation. And that's why very early on, I pointed you to the help tab here. So you could check this out. Pandas is going to be good for that. We'll talk a little bit about that in a bit, but the documentation is going to be your friend there. So thanks for that question. B. Okay. Vishnu is asking, how long does one need to hone your Python skills for data wrangling? I mean, it's very hard for me to answer that. There's so many variables, so to speak, but it's one of those things, how long can you play the violin? You could spend a lifetime on that, right? So maybe I would say that if you're looking to get impact in your organization, you can learn stuff. I mean, maybe by the end of this hour, you'll know something new, right, to implement. So that's the politician's answer, but it's really hard to put a timeline on that. I sound like a politician saying that. Ebenezer is asking VBA versus Python. Which one is best? Which one is the future? Well, I'm not gonna put words in Microsoft's mouth, but I think it's good to look at what they are doing, right? Have you noticed, for example, that there really hasn't been anything done with VBA in a very long time? And you have to wonder and ask yourself why that is, versus with Python, they're building an active integration. There's going to be more ways to work with Python and Excel together. You can already use Python in Power BI. Now, none of this is to say that VBA shouldn't be used or shouldn't be learned or anything like that. All I'm saying is just actions speak louder than words, right? So just take a look at what Microsoft's doing with VBA and Python, and I think it tells the story of that. Another kind of political answer, but that's okay. Jonathan is going to be integrating Python within Excel. Yeah, so you can check out the objectives. What we're doing is just introducing Python for Excel users. So I find that if you try to learn Python to automate Excel without understanding Python first, it's kind of shortcuts make long delays, and it doesn't work well. So we're really going to focus on understanding kind of the theory behind Python, how to use it, how to familiarize yourself with the tools. There will be a bit of a section on packages that you might want to look into if you want to work with Excel and Python together. But to understand what that means, you should know what a package is first. So we're going to focus on those basics today. Okay, Python versus R. Semu is asking, I would say check advancing into analytics. We do Python and R in that book, and that kind of walks through what those distinctions are. And I don't want to get into R too much right now because getting into Python and Excel is more than enough. So we'll answer that. Okay, I think I'm going to halt on the questions and then
okay,
keep
cool,
going.
because I have a winner if you'd like to do it right now.
Sure.
Yeah. So first name is Vanka, last name is Padmavathy, and I'm so sorry if I butcher your name. I have your email address. We'll send you an email later today. Congratulations, you won the first ebook.
Congratulations. All right. Let's see, how are we doing on time? Okay, so I'll tell you right now, we're probably not going to get through everything, but you will have the link to the repo in perpetuity. You can check out the white paper and it'll get through everything as well. So again, I'd rather get through people's questions and really meet your objectives than go through what I necessarily had. So let's look at a couple of other important things about Python. So you already know how to use a Jupyter Notebook. You already understand functions. It's pretty good for half an hour. So let's get to the next file. This is going to be called thing2. And what I want to do right now is walk you through a couple of use cases and caveats that are sure to trip you up as an Excel user. So first thing I'm going to do, now this is pretty cool with Jupyter Notebooks. I'm able to embed a Excel file right here. So this is an Excel workbook. We're able to do some basic stuff in here if you've ever embedded an Excel workbook before, so we can do some formulas and functions and things like that. But what I want to do right now is compare and contrast right here in the notebook how Python would do something versus Excel. Okay, so we already looked at absolute values and we know, okay, we could do that in Python. It's pretty much the same as Excel. If we were to try some of these things, so we have proper case absolute, then we have uppercase absolute. These aren't going to work. Now, Python is case sensitive. So just remember that. Is case sensitive. This isn't really a big deal if you're using Excel formulas and functions. It's not case sensitive. So keep that in mind. We've done objects. So you know, okay, hey, I can put this in a box called A, and then I can work on it later, right? Because it's stored in memory. But if you try the uppercase A, that's not going to work because, again, everything is case sensitive. So important caveat. Let's embed another one here. Okay, so I have a range of names, and maybe you've used the index function before. So I've got these names, and I thought I had it. Yes, I do have it named. I have a named range here. Let's say I want the third item. I'm using the index function, right? So we get 1, 2, 3. Fair enough. Index function's pretty good. Let's try the same thing in Python. Okay, so I've got a list here. I'm storing this in memory. I'm calling it liters. So this is pretty much like a named range in Excel with some important differences. So if I store this to memory, put it in the box, I can print the box. And there that is. This is called a list. Okay, let's say I need to pull out the third item in the list. This is the notation for that. So I have the name of the range. I have that item. So I'm going to run that. This actually gives us the fourth. So what's going on here is that Python actually counts things from 0. All right. As an analogy, let's say you're really, really excited to download a data set. So you click download too many times. And on Windows, it would look something like this, right? You'll have data set 1, data set 2, etc. So if you think about it, this is kind of like data set 0, right? It's not named that explicitly, but there is that expectation because the next one's data set 1. So we're counting from 0 right now in Python. That's very different than Excel. Excel does not do that. So that's another important one to know. So if we wanted to find this out, that will give us what we want. That's the third item. So another little caveat there. Another one, Python is an indented language. If you're a VBA user, you might be familiar with this for loop. So this is how you do it in Python. So this is a list. You've seen that already. This is kind of like a range in Excel. We want to go through every item here and then turn that to lowercase. So for L in languages, right through each of these, we're going to print that as lowercase. Pretty English, right? I mean, this looks pretty intuitive. Python generally, what you see as the code is what you're going to get as the results. So we are going to run that. And to back that up, a lot of the errors are pretty much in English too. I mean, a lot of programming languages are notorious for giving you errors that really mean nothing. Now, there are definitely some exceptions with Python, but this is a pretty good example, expected and intended block, and it even tells us where. So what we got to do is just indent that, and I'll print it, and there we go. So again, we're just taking the baby steps here, but you understand the caveats, the philosophy behind Python, how it thinks and operates, and how that compares to Excel. Because if you're able to make that compare and contrast, that's going to put you in a really great spot to learn. Okay, so that was thing 2. Now this file is available to you in the repo, so you can pull it all later. Everything I'm doing right now is backed up on that repo, so don't worry about getting any of the resources. Okay, so how does Python handle those things? That's why I said it feels finicky at first, but you'll come to love it after a while. I'd rather have rules that feel finicky than no rules and chaos. That's just me. Python's the same. Okay. Now let's talk about packages. So, it sounded like some people are interested in the Excel Python integration. Maybe you've heard about some packages and you want to learn more about what the deal is there. Now, the analogy I always use for these packages is, imagine you got a smartphone, and when you get one, it comes with some basic functionality, right? There, you can take notes, you can make calls, use the calendar, etc. But a lot of the real magic comes in the apps, because that allows you to do some specific thing, right? That's what these packages are in Python. So whether it's machine learning, data visualization, automating Excel, whatever, there's probably a package for that, right? To quote the proverbial, the famous saying about apps. There are going to be a couple of steps for that. So first thing you'll want to do is install that package. Just like if you want to use an app on your phone, you'd have to go out to the App Store, install it. Step one. There are a couple ways to do that. We won't get too much into that right now. The second thing is you need to bring it into your session, or you need to open it, right? If you're going to use an app, you'll want to go to your app launcher on your phone, open it. That's going to be the same with Python. So again, integrating things that you already know and have used to what we're doing now. So let's take a look at some important ones. We're not going to use these right now. You'll learn all about these in the book. So I'd encourage you to check that out, and I will get you resources, the link on how to check out the book if you'd like. These are, in my opinion, the Fab Four of Python packages for data analysis. So two have to do with data manipulation. Think about things like sorting, adding columns. Somebody was asking about pivoting, that kind of stuff. So these first two packages are going to be the go-tos for that. Then data visualization. So, don't forget about data visualization. It's often playing second fiddle to the modeling and all that, but it's just as important as everything else when we're doing analytics. Fortunately, Python has some really great packages for that as well, namely these two at the bottom. There are many others, and anything that you say with Python, there's always going to be other options, right? Just like Excel, how there's always more than one way to do something. There's usually more than one way to do something in Python, more than one package, etc. But again, these are just the basics. This is the crash course. Roll credits from the name. Okay, so let me do a time check here. Okay, so we're going to go to thing 3. We're going to learn a little bit more about packages. And then I think I'll take some questions. Yeah, and we'll do another giveaway there. Okay, so I'm going to go back to our repo, and let's play around with working with packages, because this is really where the power comes in with Python. You'd have to be a coding legend to do a lot of data analysis in Python without using packages. Probably not recommended. Okay, so we've done this to death. You know how to do this. Okay, let's move on to another function, something like the square root. Okay, so I'm going to run this, and that's going to give us an error. Okay, so something important to understand is that Python was conceived as really a general purpose programming language, a scripting language to do things like handle errors, to interact with the operating system, and so forth. It really wasn't per se conceived to do data analysis. Now, that's absolutely not saying that you shouldn't be doing it and then it can't do it. It just wasn't really, that was not its primary goal. Now, to answer the question with R, I didn't really want to get into R, but this is a good segue. R was really built to do that stuff, to work with data, do data analysis. So that is an important distinction, but I'll just leave that aside for right now. We'll focus on Python. Python has a collection of packages called the standard library. Now, these are like the core utilities on your phone to do the real essentials of computing. So one of them might be, okay, I want to find the square root. Well, there's a package called math. We can get that, run the square root. This isn't going to work. We need to actually specify where that's coming from. So it is the square root function. I wasn't lying to you, but it needs to be prefaced as from the math. So this, again, the package has already been installed. We still need to load it into our session. We need to open that app, and then we can run it. And we get the square root of 25 there. Okay, so packages are really crucial to understanding. It's good to know what packages you're using, what version of packages you're using. So there's a little bit of housekeeping here. Here's a nice little command. If you want to know what is available to me, what packages am I using right now, this pip list is going to let you do that. So you can check that out. There's a lot going on under the scenes with this. Knowing what version you're on. So pandas, we're going to be using pandas a lot in the book. We won't do a lot of it today, but you will want to, again, no matter what it is, you'll load it into your session. We'll find the version of pandas right now. I'm going to run that. And this will tell us, okay, well, I'm on version 1.2.4. I think that understanding if you're going to get stuck in Python, I should say when you're going to get stuck, knowing things like, okay, well, am I using a package right now? What version is it? What function am I using? Doing things like restarting your kernel. This is the equivalent, and you can go up here, and we'll get more into the troubleshooting later, but restarting your session, right? Help others help you. And if you know, this is like Python first aid, right? Just knowing the basics, package, kernel, objects, that's really important. So we're going to do this again. Pandas as PD, this is an alias if any SQL users are out there. We're giving pandas a nickname right now because you're going to see, Panda, you really can't do very much in Python for analytics without pandas. We're going to type it a lot because anytime we really want to refer to it, we need to specify that. So it's just saving a couple keystrokes, making this code a little more easy to work with. We'll get the same information, but we've just added a nickname to the code there. Okay, so that is thing 3. So we just did a little bit with packages, session management, those kinds of things, working with the standard library, knowing what that is. And let's take a look at some questions now. Okay, so, there are quite a few, which is great. Nice to see an active audience here. I'll see how many I can get through. Okay, so there's a question on why Python. I think I kind of explained that. Again, just look at the data. Speaking of data analytics, look at the number of people learning and using Python. It's a very popular language. And while the crowd's not always true, I hope by the end of the session, you see that maybe there's something to the popularity of it. So thank you, attendee, for doing that. Eduardo is asking, how can you work with Postgres and Python? Python works very well with databases, whether it's Postgres or if you're using Oracle or whatever relational database suite. Python is often called the glue of computing because it is interoperable. You can connect it to, if you're building an app and you need to send the data from the server to the end user to, wherever, the cloud, et cetera. Python's really good at doing that kind of stuff. So as far as Postgres specifically, you can take a look at the options there, but I would like to mention that Python is very well known for that kind of interoperability component. Okay, let's see. So Python, not Java or C. Well, Mohammed, I'm assuming that many of the audience is coming at this more from a data analytics perspective. In that case, Python has a lot more functionality for data visualization, data manipulation, and things like that than Java or C. Those are great to know, but as far as kind of a practitioner's point of view, what languages are going to help a typical data analyst get their job done, I think that Python is a good answer there. Okay. Wow, so many questions. All right, let me take like 2 more and then we can go from there. Okay. So Jaehoon is asking, what is better for using Python between VS Code or Visual Studio? They're actually different, but I'm going to assume you mean VS Code and Anaconda. Well, so Anaconda is the way that you get the Python code that I suggest to do in the book. It comes with some ways to work with Python code. So we're using Jupyter Notebooks. You could use other code editors. VS Code is a great code editor. You can run Jupyter Notebooks in VS Code. So as far, it seems like if I were to do a dimensionality reduction of all the different themes of questions that we're getting, one of them is can I do X with Python? The answer to that is probably yes. Okay. One of the other questions is, what is better, X or Y? Now, in a lot of the cases, you really don't have to choose anymore. That's just more generally in analytics, right? You can use Excel and Python together. You can use Power BI and Python together. You could use Anaconda with VS Code. You could use RStudio with Jupyter if you're an R user. So trying to think in terms of interoperability, and Python's really good at that, is a good approach. So thanks for the question. Let's continue on for the sake of time here.
Do you want to do a giveaway?
I could do that. You read my mind
I
here.
already have the name pulled up, so I beat you to it this time. And I apologize for butchering this person's name. Oyinkan Ogunbimil. Congratulations, you won one of the ebooks. We'll be in touch via email.
Congrats. Yeah. Okay, so let's see what we can get done. We've got about 15 or so minutes left. I think we're doing pretty good on time. I see a lot of questions, so apologies if I don't get to it now, but I appreciate it. And the answer may be in the book. So not to spin that too hard, but check it out. Okay, so Excel. This is Python Crash Course for Excel users. There are many packages. Now you know what packages are, and you know how to load them and install them, etc. Here are some that you might want to take a look at. So just like with Excel, you're trying to think of what function you should use, etc. There are many different ways to do the same thing, except they all have their pros and cons. And that's going to be really similar. So you can check out these packages. We're not going to do a lot with them right now, but just so you know them, you could go look them up later on. They all have their pros and cons. Some of them are meant for working with specific file extensions. Some of them are more about automating the full production of an Excel workbook. Some of them are more about building applications using Python that Excel kind of serves as the front end to. So again, it really depends on your use case. None of them are inherently better than the others. But let's walk through what that kind of workflow is going to be in most cases. So when you're in Python, almost never are you going to have your data in Python at the start, right? You're going to be bringing your data in from some other place, whether it's a database, CSV, Excel, you know all your data sources. So let's say we bring it in from Excel, then you're going to do your work to it. So, you could use things like pandas we've talked about. Some of these other packages will let us read things in from Excel in this case, because we're focusing on there. Pandas. Now, it's interesting. I haven't seen a question about Power Query, but that's a very common question I get. So, hey, what's the deal with Power Query versus with Python? Why should I use one versus the other? There are, again, there's a nice synergy between those languages because if you're a Power BI user, you'll see that there are ways, and we're not going to get into it today, but you can insert Python scripts into Power BI. So you want to think about pandas as kind of like the Power Query equivalent in Python, to be honest. If it has to do with tabular data, you'll want to go to pandas, and that's a big focus of the book. So you could check that out. But my recommendation is if you're thinking about, well, like, hey, how do I use Python to speed up my Excel processes, or I want to automate things in Excel, try to get as much done in Python as you can, right? So get your data in the exact shape that you want it using pandas probably. And then you can export it back out to Excel. So you can export using pandas. This is, I believe, what we do in the book. And that's just going to be pretty much a data dump. You're not going to get it things if you're thinking more like, okay, well, I want something exported to Excel, and I want it to have charts and conditional formatting, and I want it to be a fully boss ready presentation object, then you can use these other packages. All right, and then it'll go back to Excel, because again, doesn't really live in Excel. Everything's kind of a transient. Data is usually a transient thing that the Python script works with. It's not really a data storage mechanism. Okay, and again, we've talked about this a few times, but if you're thinking about Power Query, Power BI, the whole, that's one thing that I really try to call out, that you're really not leaving Microsoft's stack of tools if you're using Python. They want you to use Python, and that's why they're building more and more integrations with it. And if you're on another analytics vendor, it's probably the same, right? Python's getting very popular, and to stay competitive, they need to account for that popularity. Okay, so how are we doing on time here? All right, I think I'm gonna, let me open this really quickly. We've got about 10 or so minutes left. So there's a file 5 here on how to get help, because I'll tell you right now, you're never going to know everything you need to know about Python. Nobody does. You could spend multiple lifetimes on this and still not know everything. So rather than trying to memorize everything, it's more important to know what to do when you need help, right? So we've talked about some of those things. We've talked about the help documentation. We talked about restarting the kernel. The question mark operator, this is a nice one. So if you're stuck on a package or a function or something like that, just throw this into your code right in front of that function or package, and you can learn more. So maybe you're reading in an Excel file and you want to know, well, like, can I skip the first 5 rows, or this column's actually a date and I want Python to know that it's a date and stuff like that. You can find that out. Look at all these arguments. And again, this is a function, and you've seen functions that have optional arguments before. VLOOKUP is like that. So don't panic. That's really the take home with this one. We'll talk more about that in that white paper. So we'll get all the housekeeping sorted out in a moment here. Okay, so let me see here. Okay, we've got about 10 or 12 minutes. So I think we're doing pretty well. We'll do a book giveaway in a moment here. As far as the conclusions, so here's this white paper. So again, this is going to be a nice accompaniment to what we did today. It will walk through in a little more detail Excel versus Python, the packages, how Python thinks about data. So you can subscribe to that, and then I'll get a copy out to you as well. Okay, here's the book. We'll definitely get a link to you as well for that. This is a landing page. You have a few reading options here. So if you want to, you will find a link on there that you can read the book for free on O'Reilly's website. If you want to read it that way, you get a 30-day trial. You can check it out on that end. If you want to get a paperback or an ebook, you can do that too. I just learned yesterday that the book is now translated into traditional Chinese. So if that's your language, I have a link on the page now. You can get the book in traditional Chinese. So that was cool to see. And please leave a review wherever, however you decide to read it. It is the best thing that I can ask. So if you can leave a review, that would really be all I could ask for right now. So, and again, we'll get all these resources out to you in a moment here. Okay, so that's the last slide I have. So I think what we'll do for the next 10 or so minutes is we'll do the giveaway. I'll take the questions, and then we will wrap up.
Perfect. So for the giveaway, so our final winner is Fernando Austria. Congratulations, you just won one of the ebooks, and I will send you an email about how you're going to get that a little later today, along with our 2 other winners. So George, before you dive into questions, I just want to tell my team to go ahead and get that certificate link out there. We can start that a little early. So for those of you who are still watching, we do have a certificate of attendance available, and my team is going to start posting the link on our live streams as well as in the Zoom chat, so that if you want to fill that out, go ahead and fill that out. And then we will get a certificate to you before the end of the day. If you don't see it the first time, we will post it multiple times over and over and over again. So just if you don't see it the first time, you'll probably see it the second time. Um, Perfect. So, and that'll be live probably until for the next 10 or 15 minutes. So probably until we're done with the webinar. So George, now you can go ahead and answer some questions.
I can do that. And I think I see what you were talking about with, I was leaving some of these in the queue when I thought I had marked them totally cleared. So let me try this now. Okay. So, let's see. Oh, this is a good one. Okay. So Ebenezer is asking the big problem. Well, it's more of a comment. The big problem is bypassing IT protocols to install Python on office computers. Yeah, it is a problem. I'm always thinking of the best sales technique to do that. I would say, Ebenezer, and to those of you who are having this problem is, again, actions speak louder than words. So look at all the ways that Python is really expected to be used in modern development now, right? Even for Excel, there's going to be ways to use Python. There already are. So, if they don't want to take your word for it, I would hope that they would take a little company called Microsoft's word for it. And maybe there are other ways that people have gotten that passed through in their organizations. So thanks for that comment or question. Okay, so Laura is saying module not found for pandas. Laura, I would check if you could the book without knowing what's going on in your session. Oh, I forgot to answer that one live.
Sorry, I think I can expand on that a little bit. There was a problem with importing pandas. People were receiving the file not found. There was a solution that was posted in the chat though.
Oh, okay.
So maybe we can move forward.
Cool. All right. I had a little Easter egg in there, I guess, with the errors, but I guess it's pretty true to real life. So, okay, I see another question about Visual Studio. Yes, you could do that with Python. Okay, so Nereglio, I'm probably saying that wrong. For someone who only has experience in Excel, what should be the first steps in order to learn Python and become a data analyst? I would say make sure you're really familiar with the basics of Excel first, because there's way more value than most people give it credit for, right? If you've used the data analysis tool pack, if you're familiar with that, check it out first. That's the first part of the book. If you know how to put a pivot table together, if you've used Power Query and you're familiar with relational joins, right? Inner joins, left outer, et cetera, really get the basics found in Excel first, because it's such a Swiss Army tool for data analytics. So that's the first step. Then from there, you've really learned a lot about programming and about Python already. So you can pick up where you left off and think about ways, well, where are the limitations? Start to document, in your job, where are things taking too long? What are you having to do manually? What would you like to be able to do? If you had your perfect workflow, what would that look like? And then kind of reverse engineer from there how Python can fit in those cracks. So thanks for that question. Let me see if I'm trying to find the upvoted ones, if there are any other ones. Okay, so I see one that was upvoted on Tableau and Python. I'm not as familiar with Tableau's integrations with Python. I know that it has some with R, and they continue to build on that. So that might be something, if you're a Tableau user, you can check out. That's a big deal. I'm sure that you can do something. And if we have people in the audience who use Tableau and Python, but it's really not my specialty. So where did that one go? There's so many of these. I'm losing things. Not that I'm complaining. Did it get answered? No, it's there. Okay. How are we doing on time too? Okay, we got about 5 minutes.
Yeah, and we'll probably go about 5 minutes over just to accommodate for the certificate time. So
okay. All right. So I'll try to crank as many as these as I can. Okay. Somebody's asking, how about Google Sheets with Python? Your comment. Yeah, you can do a lot with Google Sheets and Python. I'm not a big Google Sheets user myself. The thing with Google Sheets is that it takes a little bit more authentication, right? Because Google Sheets is by its nature a cloud product, and Excel originally was a desktop product. So there's a little more, you're using an API it to a greater extent than you would with Excel. So it's doable. There's a book called Automate the Boring Stuff with Python. That's a real classic. Anybody who's done much learning of Python would be familiar with that title. I'm fairly confident that that book uses Google Sheets. So it is possible. And again, going to the question, the answer being generally yes to whatever tools you want to connect with Python, because that's one of its big fortes, instead of not just data analytics, but kind of interoperability in general. Okay. Okay, so Ali is asking, where did that go? What about Power BI and Python practices? So I kind of hinted at that. We didn't do it today, but you in general only want to use Python when Power BI can't easily handle what you're trying to do. So there are many use cases for that. A few off the top of my head would be anything having to do with machine learning or statistical modeling, right? I mean, it's hard enough just to get a correlation coefficient in Power BI. So that's a good one. Working with text, unstructured data, right? Sentiment analysis, something like that. Power BI doesn't have that functionality. Certain kinds of visualizations, right? Maybe you want to do a swarm plot or a violin plot or something like that. And Seaborn and other packages can do that well. Sometimes working with really big data. So you can use, you can really tune if you need to read something in via parallel computing, or you've got a really big file and you have to kind of navigate your way into reading it, you could really optimize that process to a much greater extent than with Power BI. So those are some of the use cases. They're not all of them, but again, there are a lot of things that Power BI can do just fine. But Python, like I always say, wouldn't be available if there wasn't a need for it. So thanks for that question. So there's another question about, does my book start from scratch? Yeah, I mean, the book pretty much translates to kind of what we did today. It's really like the first few pages of part 3, which is on Python. So by the end of the book, really the end state of the book is that you're able to run and interpret a basic regression model. We do a little bit of what you could call machine learning. It's like the tiniest little bit of it. So there's a lot of analytics, stats theory, data visualization, some of the stuff about managing your workflow and environment. So it is very much a beginner's book, starting in Excel, because the more that you do there and the more that you can translate to Python, the easier it's going to be to learn Python. You know, what I find helpful is focusing on learning the basics in Excel, right? Understanding how models work. And then you can go to Python and just translate that. So rather than trying to learn the coding and the theory and the stats, and you're trying to learn all these things, it's a lot of overhead. So you can kind of disintermediate all those steps if you use Python and Excel in that sequence. So thanks for that. So there's a question about, and it's getting a lot of votes, about single best online guided tutorial. Well, you'll see that both of the presenters today, the host and the presenter, both have resources for learning things. So I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Quick answer, yes.
Yeah, right. Okay, so it's 4 exactly. Are you working? Okay, so looks like the certificates are still going. Okay, so I'm trying to find some that got upvoted. I don't necessarily see anymore. Okay, so Neha is saying, what's the best way to practice Python? Yeah, the idea, like I said, just start documenting where things feel too complicated and feel more complicated than they should be at work, right? And look into, could Python help with that? Maybe anything that you're copying and pasting, we shouldn't have to do that too much. I know that for this webinar, we did have to copy and paste all the questions and answers. Maybe somebody could write a Python script for that. That might take a little longer than you want, but
yeah. Yeah, if somebody
looking at
wants to email me and help me out with that, I'm more than happy to hear solutions.
yeah, finding those pain points, I think, is really important. And then as far as the actual practice, finding the medium that works best for you, right? Whether it's books, videos, finding a community is really important, right? Making sure that you're not alone in your journey and that everybody's got more to learn. So sharing your knowledge, and this isn't just for learning Python, right? This is just learning in general, but getting in on the community early on is important too. But finding those pain points and working to address them is also important. So thanks, Neha, for that question. So how did I embed Excel in Python? So that was actually just an HTML code. So you can run basic HTML in Jupyter Notebooks if you're familiar with that. And that's all I did for that. So thank you for that question. So somebody's asking about some statistics. They want to know how to do descriptive stats in pandas. We do that to a pretty good extent in the book. So I would certainly suggest that you check out the book and that talks about descriptive stats. So thanks for that question. I think there are some other ones, but I'm never going to get through everything.
Yeah,
so.
I think for your sanity, we can end it there.
Okay.
So thanks everyone for joining, and special thanks and shout out to George for giving us his time today. I just want to let you all know George has shared some content with us, and I think the links were shared, and we'll make sure when we post the recording of this that the links are also in the description or in a special resources tab on the recording. And you can also visit our website, online.datasciencedojo.com, for more tutorials and learning resources. And my colleague would be upset with me if I didn't mention this one as well. We also have a paid program called Introduction to Python for Data Science. So if you'd like to get in with some live instructors, you can visit that as well. Thank you again. And everyone, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Have fun with Python.